Close the door.
Okay, so we've talked briefly about positioning when we introduce CSS and HTML. So let's remember what that is briefly here. So if I were to write an H1, hello world, and had them like this, can we visualize how these would land on an HTML page? Cool. They are what kind of element? Block. Take up their own space, take up their own width. What's an example of an inline element? Span, yeah. You could put a span right inside of an H1 if you wanted to. If you wanted to style that hello differently than the world, we could just do that. Give a more unique class or ID to that span, style it differently. We've isolated just this text in the overall string. Okay, so we got block and inline, inline. That's kind of how things naturally position. As soon as we add CSS to this, we can change default settings, we can change positioning, how they lay out. So first, how do I link a CSS sheet to my HTML sheet? In the head. I heard a laugh, okay. Style that CSS, and just to keep it conventional, I'll put the, what kind of path is this? That's probably an ambiguous question. The word for this is relative. It's relative to where the index HTML file is. So this is saying look at the same level. Style CSS isn't in another directory. It's in the same directory as the HTML page here on the left. If I said ... now it's saying look up a directory. Or if I said ... CSS / style.css, what would that entail? Yeah, it means I'd have a CSS folder in here with this file inside of it. So just kind of figuring out what paths look like with the console. Cool. So CSS, whenever we grab an element, let's make a fake nav bar. I'm going to tell Marcus to stop drumming. He stopped, okay. So when we give something, what are the two CSS selectors we mainly use? Oh boy. Class and what else? ID, okay. So we'll give this an ID since it's the only nav that we'll have. And right now this is all styled, it's all positioned, everything is default, right? Default HTML, default CSS. As soon as we give a class to this, what you want to start to visualize, let me pull it open here in the browser. What you want to visualize is there is this little invisible box around these three tags. This isn't the actual box I'm talking about, but it gives a good visual representation. That box there, that is CSS. It's putting a CSS box around our code by this ID here. Really, we're just highlighting the div, but think of this box as like a CSS box. And now that we have a CSS box around it, we can override all rules, we can change them, we can move them any way we want. So we're going to talk about for position attributes that we can give an element with how it should lay out on a page and what it means. One sec. Sorry. I hate shutting down a good time.
Play in the kitchen.
Yeah, go play in the kitchen. We're outside. It's a beautiful day. All right, so positioning. The first position we will look at, grabbing our nav bar, is position static. Static is the default. Everything we have on the web page by default is position static, which just means land where you usually land. Act like you usually act. So we normally never have to use position static because that is the default. The only time you may be using it is if you're using a CSS framework like Bootstrap or something like that that has other defaults and we want it to be static, then we'd override it. But by most of the time, you'll never have to use static because again, it's the default, just land where you land. Let's give this a width of 100% viewer width and a background color of some sort of pleasant gray. Okay, it's not that pleasant, but does anyone remember the selector that's used for like defaults, resets? Yeah, asterisk or star. I'm just gonna get rid of margin. There we go. And what could I give this nav to space the border out from the words inside? This is one that you may have gone over with Bob in the box model. Padding. So margin is outside of this border, padding is on the inside. So I want to space these words from the borders of the box they're in. Say padding 10 pixels. It's going to be a lot, but enough for this example. Okay, so that is static. The next ones we want to look at are relative, absolute, and fixed. And these are general positioning. How do you land on the page? How do you stay on the page if I want you to? So next we'll do relative. Let's just change it here. And notice the big change. Nothing changed. You won't be looking for it. So relative also is the same as static in the sense land where you land unless I tell you otherwise. So these three position that we can use with the attribute position give us access to 4 other selectors. Namely, once we use any of these, we get left, right, top, and bottom. So these selectors will not work in your CSS unless it also has a position of one of these 3. And using these, we can tell this div to position itself relatively to certain coordinates we give it. So let's say we want to move it from the top 10 pixels. I can say now that it's positioned relative, I can say move from the top, move down 10 pixels, and it will bump down. I can do the same with left and right to kind of have it move around the page relatively to where it naturally lands. As far as points for this, you can use pixels, you can use percentages, be 10% from the top. Nope, that's not working, stick with pixels. Maybe it says left. But just know you get top, left, right, we won't use right now because we're already using left, and then bottom, we're already using top. So we don't really need to designate a bottom. But what is a really quick way now? Let me get rid of these. If we have top, left, bottom, and right, how can I make this navbar stick to the bottom of the page? I could say top, we could try 100%. Let's see what that does. Maybe a top 100 viewer height. Now that moves it off the page. So instead of saying top, this is where you kind of got to think opposites. If I say top, I'm saying move from the top down this far. If I'm saying left, I'm really saying move to the right or move away from the left this far. So with that in mind, what I'd actually say is from the bottom, move 0 pixels. Sorry, dramatic effect. And it would help if our body, sorry, 1 second, was tall enough to account for this. Uh-oh. My keyboard's making that, okay. Something's not working here. Position relative bottom 0. It's all right, we'll make this work. It's still landing where it's supposed to land. So let's do this. Play with relative a bit more. We'll come back to that. ID box. So I want something more visually we can see. Big blue screen, okay. So where relative and absolute really become the most useful is when they're used together. So remember, relative will still land where it's supposed to land. It just gives you access to top, right, bottom, and left. So we'll just keep that at 10 pixels for the example of relative. But we can use these together. So absolute is it's the opposite of relative and static in the sense that it's taken off the page. It doesn't matter where it naturally lands. It's just going to be shoved up in the corner by default. So I'm going to make a little absolute box here inside of our big box. We'll give this an ID of absolute box. Give it a little dimension so we can see it. Okay, so by default, it's landing where it's supposed to land. Now, if I give it a position of absolute, it's landing where it's supposed to land still. Just to show you kind of what's happening here though, let's take this down to 5. Okay, so when I say absolute, it pops out of whatever it's in. It's no longer on the page. So if this was like the footer and I give it position absolute, it jumps to the top of the page. It doesn't matter where it's supposed to naturally land. But I can tell an absolute positioned item to be stuck inside of another box. To show you this, first with absolute, now if I say bottom 0, it should jump down to the bottom of the page. If I say right 0, it'll now stick to the bottom right. So this is showing that absolute is saying float. I'll tell you where to sit. Okay, but what if I wanted this black box to stay stuck in this blue box, just like we have it here? Right, right now this doesn't look like this is a div inside of this div because it's way down here, it's absolute. If I make this outer box relative, absolute now sticks to the inside of that box. That is now its dimension. So this box one, this blue one, as soon as I give it a position of relative, the black box is stuck in it because it's absolute. So how would I get this to the top right corner? Who wants to give it a shot? Not with the sense, with position. So we got left, right, top, and bottom to work with. So if I said bottom 0, I want it to be in the top right.
Oh, sorry, I meant to say right 0.
Right 0, and then undo that one. Okay. But as soon as let's do this, I'll say bottom 0. If I were to comment this out, where is that black box going to go? Prove it. Yeah. Yeah, it's no longer confined with a relative box. So the main thing with relative and absolute is that they can be used in tandem like this. They both get access to top, left, bottom, and right. They can both use this for positioning. If we put an absolute box inside of a relative box, like this, we can make this thing stuck to this box. So I want a logo in the top left corner. Great, left 0. We're already in the top, so it's there. I wanted to make it rounded. Sorry, this is random. I just want it rounded. And we got our little logo in the top left. Okay.
Is there a way to use that positioning to get it to sit in the center?
It's tricky, and it's not preferred. There are better CSS methods for centering, but for the time being, yes, you'll probably have to be using some positioning for this. So we could try 50% left. That's too far. It really helps if we know if this is like an exact width, this box, but it's the full width of the screen, so that's a little tough. So you kind of have to just play with it, showing you kind of one of the restrictions of positioning. Oh, it's because it's not in here anymore. And this is the fun game you get to play. Hey, that's pretty much in the center-ish. Yeah, now I changed the side of the page, and it's trying to figure it out, almost stay center. The 40% is changing depending on the width of its container. And it's kind of moving, listing lazily to the left. Okay. We're going to come back and look at this in a second, but let's look at fixed real quick here. So I'm going to comment this out. We're going to simulate this again. And then I'm just going to make a big lorem ipsum tag. Anyone heard of lorem ipsum? Text holder. Who wants to make a website and write, all the user stories, fake text and stuff? We don't want to have to do all that. It'll be provided to us if we're making a website. So lorem ipsum is the common placeholder text for programming. VS Code has a shortcut. If you type the word lorem and hit tab, it gives you a paragraph for free, or as many as you want, really, of just random words. So I can make this big website here quickly. Okay, and here's my whole website. Here's my nav bar. I'll give this an ID of sticky nav, or no, let's say fixed nav. Just so we can see it clearly. There's our nav bar. And what I'd like is it for it to stay in place. So let's say position fixed. Notice now when I scroll, it will fix to where it's at, or where it's landing by default. But just like relative and absolute, fixed gets these coordinates as well. So if I want this truly to be a nav bar that stays at the top, I probably have to define its width now. Let's say be as wide as the page, 100 viewer width. And now I got this sticky, appealing nav bar that stays at the top of the page even while I scroll. And that's what fixed does by default. And so if this was maybe a mobile app and I want the nav bar to be stuck at the bottom, what would I have to add to this ID to do that? Again, we have top, left, bottom, and right. Bottom 0. Now we got a sticky nav at the bottom. So as far as positioning is concerned, kind of orienting yourself for the web page, these 3 attributes can get you pretty far. But as you saw when I was kind of pushing the circle over percentage by percentage, they're not perfect. And if you're trying to do that, they definitely have their time and place. Get rid of that so it goes back to the top. I know a lot's been coming at you today, so any questions on what these are? Relative, absolute, fixed. What's the default one that everything has by default? Static, okay. Relative, just like static, it will land where it's supposed to land, but you have the access to move it if you want. Absolute, it will just float to the corner until we tell it where to go. Unless, what can we use with absolute to confine it to another box? Relative. If I put an absolute box in a relative box, it's now confined to the relative box. Yep, parent-child relationship coming in strong. And then fixed is literally just saying, where do I want you to sit always? This is your spot of the screen. Even if I'm scrolling, you're going to stay there. Remember, without fixed, it's just a nav bar. It'll disappear as I scroll. You need to tell it to stay there. Notice what's happening to the first sentence. This isn't the first sentence. The first sentence is lorem ipsum. So what's happening when I make it fixed? Yeah, it's showing you this isn't taking screen space. It's floating on top of it. So what could I possibly do to make that first sentence show up still? Margin, what would I put margin on? Would I put margin on the nav bar or on the text? Text, because again, once we're fixed or absolute, we are off the screen. We're floating on top of everything else. If we give it margin, it's not going to push other things away because it's already floating. So let's grab the text, this p tag. We only have one, so let's just say p tag, margin, top, 50 pixels. That didn't work. Let's try padding top. Okay. We get that space. So there's one more thing we need to look at, because the next one of the exercises we give you with this is, I thought it was fun. It has its dark days as well. But this is going to force you to do some console styling, aka console styling your website via the console. And why is that helpful? You see it live. And this is especially important. We'll go back to the other example here. Okay, so I have that. And let's say I want this, I'm going to keep it at this resolution. I want this black square to sit like right here. And I don't want to keep going back and forth to my style sheet, checking it, style sheet, checking it. So if I right click this dot and hit inspect, it'll pull me right to that box and its current styling in DevTools. If I highlight one of these selectors, like 40%, for example, and I'll hold in shift and press up or down, it scrolls the page. I need the percentage sign too. There we go. If I hold in shift and press up and down, it jumps by 10%, or an increment of 10. If I hold in, I think it's control, not control, command. Command, it goes by 100, so a little intense. Option does by fraction of a percent, so you can just hold it up and slowly see it move. And FN, it's the very bottom left-hand button. That goes by a full number. And this is really nice when you're trying to get that pixel perfect styling, get something right into the right place. I can come into here. I'll change the percentage to maybe 20 pixels. I'll highlight the 20, hold in shift and press up until I get it right where I want it to be. Great. Then I can just take all of this styling, do a Command C, come into here, Command V, and I've saved my styling. So again, shortcuts for that. You want to highlight the whole digit, hold in Shift, FN, Option, Command, Control. They all do an increment step when you press a button with it, or one of the up or down arrows with it. So why do I bring this up? This exercise. You're gonna make some flags. Now, there are a bunch on here it's asking you to make. If you can make half of these, I think you'll get the point. If you want to make all of them, go for it. So if you don't get the point of half of them, do all of them. So what you'll do is you'll get something like this box here, right? The flag of France. And your goal is to make this in your HTML. So let's make the first, we'll make one together just to show you what this is looking for. And then I'll give you this in the other exercise we have for the day. So we got blue, white, and red. How many divs do we see here? I hear 3 and 4. One of those is right. 4 for the whole thing. We got 1 box, 2 box, 3 box, 4 box. We got 3 boxes inside of a bigger box. Why is that nice? Position relative, position absolute. We can move things to the side of the box that they're in. This is a really simple layout once we understand those principles. So let's make France real quick, and we'll go from there. So comment this out. I'm just going to make, for every flag, you'll want to make a new div. So this is the div for France. This is the div for the next flag, whatever it be. All right, so, and if you want to like organize, well, this is France. And this is probably like Germany. Okay, so I'll give this an ID of French flag. And we said 3 divs on the inside for the 3 stripes. If you really want to style these all out like intensely, we can say French blue, French white, French red. No, which I will not do, so we'll just see that happen naturally. All right, so what am I grabbing first? Which one of these IDs do I want to style first? The container. And we get a guess, well, you know, what are the dimensions of this? I'd guess it's something like a 3 by 3, or, you know, it's pretty much a square, a little oblong, but, so French flag, let's go in here. We'll say French flag, maybe a width of 300 pixels and a height of 250. And just so we can see it, we'll give it a border of 1 pixel solid black. And it's quite large. Wrong thing. Right thing. Okay, there's my French flag box. Okay, now I have French blue, French white, French red. How are we styling this? First, how do we get the blue to be this left-hand bar? Ooh, why 100 each? Yeah, because we picked a nice width that can be split into thirds. We're nice to ourselves that way. So we'll say width, 100 pixels. Okay. Background color blue. Ah, we still don't see it. Why? It is, no, background color's right. Why aren't we seeing the blue show up? Nope, it has no height. And this is 250 pixels to fit the, now it has dimensions and it fills in. This is an empty div, remember? So divs will automatically be the height and width of their content. If they have no content, you must give them dimensions. Hey, we haven't even used position in here yet, and it's working fine. In fact, I might just leave the white alone. It's doing its job already. So let's style the red. How do we get the red to stick to the right-hand side? Okay, so we'll start off with position, absolute. What else does this need? Right, 0, okay. Okay. Still not seeing it. Okay, height, 250 to match the size of the box it's in. Still not seeing it. Okay, background color would be good. Let's go a fire brick. Still not seeing it. What are we missing? It has no dimensions. Width, 100 pixels. But whoops, that's not what we wanted. Why is it way down here? Yeah, this is absolute, but is it positioned in a relative box? So this one's still taking space. So let's say position relative. Now I'm slightly confused. No. No, that's right. Ooh, this is good. I like this. I like when things don't work. There we go.
That's if you had your thing just slightly down on the page.
Yeah, just move the whole flag. Yeah, so you don't need PX in CSS. If it's 0, it'll default to that, but whichever you prefer. Right, and so here's flag 1. Then I come into here and I do it separately, so another box shows up down here. The issue is they're going to be smashed up against each other, so we can get the French flag a margin bottom of like 5 pixels and space them out if you want. But at the end of it, you'll be able to scroll down this page and see, 5, 6, or if you do them all of these flags. So that, this one's going to be pretty similar, working with different dimensions. They do get a little bit harder where you're going to start, playing with, here's a div, and here's a div. No, they'll all vary. So how many divs is this one? Yeah, 3. So we got 1 blue box. This blue box is relative, and we have 2 yellow rectangle divs that are positioned absolute. This one has a full width and a small height. This one has a small width and a full height, just positioned in the box. Okay, let's look at one more. No, you don't have to do that one. It's just kidding. But I mean, they do get challenging, like crescent moon. How do we get that effect? Like, I'll let you kind of have fun with that one if you get to it. Think circles. I'm hearing it. We got grease. You're gonna play with some stripes. And this is where the console tools, if you get this far, hitting the up arrow to get it right in the right position is going to save you a lot of time. Because how many divs do we see here? I'm curious. Take a second to count. 7. I'm counting one more time.
I found 15.
Yeah, I got about 13 the first time too. Let's see. Yeah, 13.
You do it different ways though. You can make the main one the background.
Yeah, if you did this one, the alternated background. So I saw 13 if you break them all into their own parts. So we got, look at this, 1 big div carrying it all. So 1, we've got this div for this box, 2, 3, 4, then 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. But if we get rid of the whites, that's already the background color, then these ones, -4 from that, so it would be a 9 divs. So different ways to do it. You'll have some fun with that. So we want you to practice CSS positioning with this, and also I know, at least I'm not a designer. You don't come here necessarily to learn design, but you still have to understand principles of it. So design a blog. You're gonna make a static website, meaning there's no JavaScript involved. This is just HTML, CSS, and that must fit these criteria. So a fixed horizontal nav bar, meaning it always stays on the page like the one that we saw. A blog style feed. You'll just be hard coding divs that have like, you know, fake blog posts, fill them in with lorem ipsum if you want to. I think he mentions that here. Yeah, use lorem ipsum, filler text. Each blog should have a date. You can hard code that. Should have a title. Should have an image of some kind as well. So this, along with the flags, along with the array methods, you got plenty to work on there. So we're going to give you the rest of the day to do that, and a little time tomorrow morning as well. I would try to do some work on it tonight though, so we're, you know, keeping up. But these early principles really kind of just got to be drilled in. So if these assignments feel like drills, that changes quickly. Just heads up. Use the drills now to your advantage, because it will soon go to application where you're given a blank page and have to do something with it. So getting this practice will really help. Questions on either of these assignments? Yeah. Now notice the blue isn't absolute because it naturally landed there, but if I wanted this to be perfect, I'd probably make it absolute. So now it is sitting inside of its relative French flag container. You want to get all, you know, fancy with it. Rats. There we go. So overall today we covered string methods, array methods. We did a little review of functions and for loops, and then we covered CSS positioning and layout with those 4 selectors. Static, relative, absolute, and fixed. The write-up, if you need reading material for this, is here. And then I'll put both the exercises in there.